let's go back into the core component. Remember, we're just talking about the what's more effective and what is least effective and why. And so if you always have the knowledge to control, uh, so number one is you want to make sure you're in the 20th percentile of your target markets, demographics, psychographics, geographics, psychographic barriers, gateways. Number one, that puts you in a sweet spot. Now, if you don't have the right messaging from that point, needs, obstacles, or trust, then it's over anyway. But that puts you in the sweet spot right there of our target market. Now, from there, we're going to use the principles of the S curve of economics in the marketing. And so what are those? Remember, those are when we start with publicity for the reasons of trust, authority, and name recognition. Now, can you expect much business from publicity? No. And typically the only business you get is what's called low-hanging fruit. In other words, people that have real high needs that are ready to act. Well, that's a very, very small percentage of any market, is people with real high needs. So, but that's why we start with publicity for the reasons that I cited. And from there we go into the advertisement. And one of the main components of the advertisement is identifying the problem and giving the solution. Those are some of the main components of advertising. So if you're missing the mark on what that target market's problem is, and remember, there's always what's called primary and secondary and tertiary problems. So you never want to be addressing a secondary or tertiary problem or a service factor. And remember, there's a difference between a problem and a service factor, and you can't confuse the two. So there's primary problems and there's primary service factors, and then there's secondary problems and secondary service factors. So the advertising is always identified toward the primary problem, not the secondary and not the primary service factor. So of that target market. So we're going to cover those specifically, what those are. And that's what the advertising would attack, essentially. And so we've got starting to get name recognition, a little bit of authority, a little bit of trust from the publicity. We come in identifying a primary problem. We're identifying how to solve that problem, not just once, but possible multiple times. And so this is how a campaign runs. And of course, remember, in this particular target, the advertising and publicity alone won't work unless there's like really, really high need. And that's always a small percent. So the massive amount of people are going to be obtained through educational sales because of the three core components of a purchase. You'll be able to control need, you'll be able to control the obstacles, and you'll be able to control trust with sales. You can only control trust with publicity, and you can only control obstacles or trust with advertising, not need. And so that's the ratio of any target market we're looking at and how we're going to be evaluating it.